So it's 2025, and the 2024 Monster Manual is finally here. Weird, I know. Also, there are no orcs or drow in Dungeons & Dragons anymore. Well, there's no orc or drow stat blocks in the new Monster Manual. We're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about things that actually will help you run your games when it comes to using orcs in your campaigns. So yes, the new Monster Manual does not include drow or orc stat blocks, or Dwerger, the Dark Dwarfs. They're not included either. And this is all part of a change that has come about because Dungeons & Dragons has decided to nerf Hold Person. Well, I mean, that's one explanation for this. What they've done, essentially, is they have removed most of the humanoid monsters from the Monster Manual. Not that they're not there anymore. Goblins are still there, and hobgoblins and bugbears. They're just no longer humanoids. They're now fae. Kobolds are considered dragon type, and Aarakocra are elementals. The Githzerai and Githyanki are now aberrations, and the Yuan-Ti are monstrosities. So you see that they've had a change of design, and some people are bothered by that. Not so much the things that I just named, but the fact that orcs are now not a monstrous race in the Monster Manual, or at least there's not a stat block for them, and the same is true for Drow and Dwerger, like I said earlier. Cut! Editor Brad here, and I'm jumping in to just point at something out. In that last clip, I said monstrous race, even though my script said species. And that's just an example that change is hard. I've been playing this game for over 40 years, and, well, it's not easy to switch the nomenclature. It's not easy to make adjustments. And a lot of people are objecting to those changes, especially when they feel like those changes aren't necessary from their perspective. And this video was going to be a lot longer as I delved into the discussion about the history of D&D and orcs and the changes that have been made during 5th edition. But ultimately, Bob World Builder did a really good job of tackling that, and I happened to catch his video right before I sat down to edit mine. So I'm just going to point you in his direction. Go check that out. I honestly feel like you guys all know this. If you're here watching this, you are probably so engaged in this community that you already have your opinions about ORCy and 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and orcs in their place. And you probably already have a place for orcs in your own homebrew setting, or how you use orcs, even if you're running in Forgotten Realms. So I'm going to spend the rest of this video going into ways that will help you implement orcs into your campaign, and I'm even going to give you some stat blocks to help facilitate that. But before we get to my solutions, let's take a look at what WotC is telling you to do with their new Monster Manual. They've replaced orcs, drow, and dwergar with generic NPC stat blocks. The cool part about this is it gives you a lot more NPC stat blocks to work with, and they've basically tripled the size of NPC stat blocks in the book. So that is useful overall. So if you are running an old D&D adventure, and that adventure says there are orcs in this room, and there is an orc Eye of Grumsh in that room, you now translate that to a new NPC stat block. And there's an appendix in the back of the new Monster Manual to show you which stat blocks to use in replace of those old orc and drow stat blocks. So you can see that the orc is now replaced by the tough NPC stat block. The orc Eye of Grumsh is replaced with the cult fanatic stat block. The orc war chief is replaced with the tough boss, and the orog is replaced with the berserker. The orog in 2024 wore plate mail, that's heavy armor, and it was more of a tank, more of a fighter type character, where the berserker is more of a barbarian type character, lower armor class, and has like an aggressive ability. So these feel different. So that, some people would say, is kind of lazy design, just replacing orc stat blocks with NPC stat blocks. Now with the drow stat block is replaced with the priest acolyte, drow elite warrior replaced with gladiator, drow mage with bandit deceiver, drow priestess of Lolth is replaced with the fiend cultist. Notice the dwergar is now replaced with the spy stat block. Now, as always, you can help out the channel by hitting the like and subscribe button and clicking the notification bell to make sure that you get to see all my latest videos. Now, in the comments, tell me how you've used orcs in your campaign settings. And I'm going to give you 5 ways that I've used orcs in mine. The first one are Warriors of Grumsh. And this goes all the way back to Greyhawk, but has been translated to Forgotten Realms as well, that orcs come from the god Grumsh, and therefore they are kind of his descendants, and that is why most orcs are evil, because they are descendant from and worship the evil god Grumsh. And there's also a pantheon of other orc gods as well. And this is easily reflected in the stat blocks that are provided to you in the 2014 Monster Manual and Volo's Guide to Monsters. So if you still have that book, you have a bunch of stat blocks that you can use to represent the orcs who are worshipping the god of Grumsh. Now, in your campaign setting, not every orc needs to worship Grumsh, but you could certainly have a villainous faction of orcs who follow Grumsh and the other evil gods that traditional orcs have worshipped throughout the history of Dungeons & Dragons. Number 2, you could have a group of orcs who worship the god Talos. Talos the Stormlord. And the best way to get a feel for orcs who worship Talos is from the adventure Icespire Peak from the Dungeons & Dragons Essentials Kit. This is a great adventure, and it focuses on a group of orcs who were displaced from their home by a white dragon. And these orcs are kind of a sympathetic villain because of that. However, they do worship the evil god Talos, and therefore are evil, and once again make good villains for your game. And if you want the Anchorite of Talos stat block, this is the spiritual leader of these Talos worshipping orcs, that stat block is in that adventure. And this brings me to an interesting point, that any of the stat blocks that are in the old adventures, they're still available to you when you run those adventures. You don't have to use or substitute those stat blocks with the 2024 Monster Manual stat blocks. In fact, a lot of times you will have to use the stat blocks from the adventure you're running because those monsters aren't directly replicated in the new Monster Manual. So a third way to use orcs in your campaign is make them a bunch of demon-worshipping barbarians. And with these orcs, you can use any stat blocks you want and add the demonic boons from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. This book provides you the opportunity to attach special abilities to your NPCs to reflect any magic that is being derived from worship of demons or any demonic possession that might occur in your demon faction. So this is where my stat blocks come in. There'll be a link in the description below where you can download a PDF of these stat blocks that I've created by combining these demonic boons from the old Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes book with more modern stat blocks from the new Monster Manual. And you can use those however you like. And our fourth way to use orcs is to completely invert the trope. And instead of making your orcs a big tribe of warriors, make your orcs a secret society. And this is a group of orcs that worship the devils of the 9 hells. And I provided you 3 different stat blocks to reflect these orcs who worship Asmodeus and 2 of his archdevils. So with these stat blocks, you can use orcs as a secret society trying to undermine another faction in your game. Our 5th and final example is orcs who follow a mighty dragon. So as minions of this evil dragon, these orcs have draconic abilities. So what I did was I took the 2014 orc stat blocks and boosted them up a little bit with some draconic features. So you can find those in the PDF as well. I hope you find all of this really helpful. Go ahead and download that PDF and tell me what you think of the stat blocks and let me know if you use them. They're completely free to you. Ultimately, this game is about you and your friends, and you can use orcs however you want to in your games. And your games can be very dungeon crawl, kick down the door, punch the monster in the face, and loot the bodies. Or it can be a nuanced, interesting drama of complex issues. Or anywhere in between. It's all up to your preference and the maturity of your players. So enjoy D&D however you enjoy D&D. And don't let anyone tell you that you are wrong or that you have to do it a particular way. Ultimately, this game is supposed to be fun for all of us, and I hope you continue to enjoy as much Dungeons & Dragons as you can squeeze into your busy life. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time in the Dire Den.